I feel that faith is what carries me through. During the hard times, when I look back and reflect, I had very little faith and very little faith in myself.
What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
Are you interested in having Rick speak at your event or business? Here is what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
I absolutely loved his performance. It made me feel some type of way.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event, hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickornelas.com to book him today.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, and she is a very, very special one. She's the first person to be featured as both a social impact spotlight of the podcast and a live guest on the show today. Let's just say I'm incredibly excited to have her on the show, as she was one of the original sparks of inspiration for the creation of iSpark Change back in 2020. Truly one of a kind. Our guest today is on a mission to uplift the planet. She's gone from being an awkward kid on welfare that didn't fit in to being beloved by millions. And when I say millions, I mean a whopping 50 million plus follower empire on social media. She has the desire to single-handedly grow positive energy in the hearts and minds of everyone on this planet, yet is as down to earth as they come. She has a radiance and beauty that embodies a unique combination of positivity, inspiration, motivation, charisma, and business success. She's been through the struggles and adversity of life, even hitting rock bottom at one point, and knows that being your authentic self is one of the keys to success. She's an entrepreneur, leader, writer, CEO, and visionary in personal development with a huge, huge heart. She's a humble and empathetic servant leader who genuinely wants to help improve the lives of others. She's the author of the new book coming out on April 18th, The Comfort Zone, Create a Life You Really Love with Less Stress and More Flow. Please welcome the compassionate, transformative, and confident founder of Power of Positivity, Positive Kristen herself, Kristen Butler.
Hi, Rick. Thank you so much. That was amazing. I would say that's probably the best intro I've ever had.
Well,
thank you.
You are so welcome. But I have to tell you that I just put the words together. It's your story, and so everything on there came from you. So you owe yourself some gratitude, I guess, for creating that beautiful intro.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So as I said off air, and as I said in the intro, I've been looking forward to this interview for over 3 years. And that's because when I decided to have a podcast, I wanted to have you on as my first ever guest as I launched the podcast, because you were such an inspiration, as I said, for me creating iSpark Change with everything that you've built with Power of Positivity. And timing didn't work out then, and now it's much better timing for both of us. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, I just have to share that makes it extra special for me.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So with the theme of our show being social impact heroes, we consider everyone that we have on the show, no matter who they are, no matter what they do, where they come from, we consider them a social impact hero, someone that impacts the lives of others and is making the world a better place. Now, I think for everyone that's listening, that's going to be pretty obvious when they look at what you've built. But what I want to know is, do you see yourself as a hero?
Wow, that's a great question. I think after that intro, I do. I just wake up every morning and want to help people. If you want to call that a hero, I guess so. I love that. I definitely maybe don't claim that title, but it's true. If you're serving the world, you're a hero in some way. You know, there's so many people suffering that we all need to kind of spark that inner hero.
Yeah, and I'm glad you that you answered the way you did, Kristen, because one of the things I like to say to our audience is that anyone can be a hero any day. That through your actions, through being positive, through impacting others in a positive way, and being a light to them in whatever challenge they may be going through. And you exemplify that, obviously, but everyone has the opportunity to do the same thing. So
Yes.
I'm glad you answered that way. So I'd love for you. It's a lot of people may know, but many of our listeners may not. We have listeners from all over the world in multiple countries and the other side of the globe, in India and Australia and places like that.
Wow.
So I'd love for you to share your hero origin story of how you went from being that awkward kid that I just discussed, that didn't really fit into creating the power of positivity. And I know that's a long journey, but yeah. what were some of the things that really motivated you to go from who you were to who you are now?
I think one of the biggest things was embracing who I truly am. The world likes to tell you who you are and what you should be doing. And it really wasn't until I started embracing Kristen and what Kristen likes and what Kristen wants to do that I truly started finding my path and then loving my path, because it's our life and we have to claim it and we have to be courageous enough to pursue our purpose. And so as soon as I started discovering what that was and saying yes to the feelings inside and being courageous enough to take the next step, I started to see amazing changes. Of course, it was a long journey, and I'm still pursuing that journey. But yeah, when you're in alignment with why you're here and you step into that, it's just amazing.
I agree completely. And I'd have to say that, we all have our journeys that we go to. And I went through a similar journey, especially kind of coming to realize where I needed to be and living in my purpose and in my comfort zone, if you will. Just a few years ago, not realizing that I just wasn't where I needed to be. But I think for a lot of people, they're not able to find it, especially when they're struggling. And I've read in your book, The Comfort Zone, which we'll get into more details about, but I've read where you talk about, dropping out of college or being depressed or anxious or having trouble with your weight and things like that, being completely lost in your 20s. How did you really get out of some of those dark times? Because so many people get stuck in those dark times, and it's difficult to navigate your way out when you feel, just the weight of the world or feel buried in those. So how were you able to, in the different times, how were you able to navigate and get past that?
Yeah, I think simply it was loving myself over rejecting myself. I was always kind of negative internally. I never thought I was doing enough, being enough, looking good enough, happy enough. And it wasn't until I started embracing who I was, loving who I was, using affirmations and things like that to really turn the table internally first. So it was really an internal discovery and journey of loving myself. And I think that we all need that when we're in those dark places. We're rejecting who we are and where we've been and shaming ourselves. And when we stop doing that, it's just such a transformation in itself to just accept ourselves where we are and love that person.
A lot of people talk about, like you're talking about, love that person. And I know so many people struggle with that. So many people struggle with loving themselves. And at times it's been challenging for me to personally understand that, because, even when I was a chubby little kid and I would get bullied and picked on and everything, I don't ever know if I really didn't love myself. I think I always loved myself because my parents really fostered a love and family and our faith. And so it was so strong. And I guess maybe like the, little kid, like, oh, Jesus loves me, like that. So I love myself. I never really thought like, oh, I don't love myself. But I have thought of times where I didn't really like the person that I was or the person that I was becoming. And more so in terms of actions, right? Like how I would act towards another or towards a loved one or a family member or something, or say something that I didn't want to say. So did you have times like that, Kristen, where was it always internal for that loving yourself, or was sometimes it a reflection of how you would interact with others and the world around you?
Yeah, Rick, that's a really good question. I think maybe it was both. As a young child, I was super confident, super enthusiastic, and people would say, hey, you're too much, or, you're too loud or too this, And so I think I just started accepting what people were saying and then internalizing that, like, okay, you need to do more. You need to, kind of be more obedient to the outside world in a way. But in doing so, you reject who you truly are. And I mean, that can look different. Like you said, for you, that was maybe other things. But I feel like in some way we reject ourselves, and that's how we get to that stuck place, because we're not pursuing the things that we're here to do.
And I completely understand that. And I know that at least what I could say that I've seen in my time on this planet is that when I was young, when I was a kid or a teenager, that it was much harder to be yourself. It was much harder to be yourself. You felt that you had to conform, like you said, to what others' views are of you, or society, the norms or things like that. And now what I've seen with my daughters, and what I've seen more in working with like Gen Z and some of the younger generations, is that it's far more acceptable, to be authentic, be vulnerable, be yourself, be open, just, be whatever that looks like, whatever that looks like. And so have you seen that evolution over your time, like even doing Power of Positivity, or just in your own life? Have you seen that change where people are more accepting, where it's more, it's easy to be yourself?
Yeah, I feel like over the last decade and a half, the way social media has evolved, you have seen that. And then you also see the other side where people feel like they can't be authentic. So I think maybe there's just always that duality. But I do feel like in the younger generations, they are like, I don't think I ever heard the word authentic when I was a kid. Like, what's authentic,
Me neither.
Today, there's the possibility to know about that and to be yourself and embrace who you are. There's definitely the opportunity for that. With social media, though, I feel like there's also the opportunity for more judgment and, clicks and things like that. So, I mean, I think we'll always have that, but I do like the progress because when I was a kid, it was like you had bullies and no one was really taught emotional intelligence or really how to treat people. If they didn't have like the right home environment, it was just kind of like, well, is what it is. But today there's just so much more of that being educated in the school, which I love.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is that emotional intelligence component, because I know for, in my time working in corporate for 20 years and then building a business after that, I've seen really the growth and the proliferation of that emotional intelligence and the importance, and have tried to teach that to my children, as I'm sure you are, with your kids. And I think we'll get to that place, right? It's still a work in progress. I think we'll get to that place. And a big part of it, I think a big part of emotional intelligence is having that positive mindset, having that positivity as part of your life. So I know I've read or heard you say that positivity is a lifestyle, right? It's the opportunity to see good and seize the good even in the challenges, and that you can take action that supports growth in healthy ways. So how would you say that became a reality for yourself, that you learned, hey, this is going to be my lifestyle. This is going to be a part of who I am and everything that I'm going to be about.
Yeah. So the question was how did I discover that?
Yeah. How did positivity really become the lifestyle that you've chosen? I mean, I know you had that journey to get there, but was it a conscious effort where you said, hey, I'm going to become positive Kristen now, and this is who I'm going to be? Or was it just an evolution over time?
Yeah, I always loved quotes. Even in high school, I would have like, shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you land among the stars, and things like that. Mm-hmm. But the power of positivity really takes it to the next level, because it's our thinking. Transforming our thinking is important, and it's so healing. But then taking those action steps, and I like to approach it in a more holistic way, where it's really focusing on mind, body, soul. So it's not really just about achievement and using it for goal setting and, manifesting or any of that. It's also just to take care of our well-being and truly enjoy this journey versus kind of just chasing a destination. And when we look at it more holistically and just make it part of our lifestyle, then we see that full transformation in all areas. But we're putting our attention into all areas and making it more positive. So I saw that transformation when I put the time into it intentionally in all areas. And that's why we like to talk about it in the Power of Positivity community, because it's just so impactful when we take it beyond just thinking,
That's a great answer. And I thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a great segue into discussing the comfort zone, because part of what I gathered from reading The Comfort Zone, and I feel humbled and grateful that I was able to, be one of the first to read it. But part of what I took away from it is that living in your comfort zone, as you define comfort zone, and I'd love you to define it for our audience, but that what I took away from that is that it's really about, having that positivity in all aspects of life, really living as who you are, really creating purpose in your life and being authentic and not placing any boundaries on yourself and everything like that. So, how do you really see it? Or if you can define it for our audience that, will for certainly read the book, but, just for now, for our purposes.
Yeah, the comfort zone is different than the current comfort zone. So in my book, I talk about 3 zones of living: complacent zone, comfort zone, and survival zone. So the current comfort zone, to me in my book, I talk about it being the complacent zone, because to me, complacency isn't comfortable. So I don't know why we're talking about complacency as a comfort zone as society outlines it. To me, the comfort zone is the place of pure positive emotion and balanced action. So we might take time for rest and we might take time for action. It's really a place where we can harness and be our best selves and live a fulfilling life. I don't see it as something that's keeping us from our dreams. I actually found that it's a place that's where I found my dreams and my purpose, and I'm living it in the comfort zone. So it's a mindset shift to me, but complacency isn't comfortable. Inaction isn't comfortable. Feeling stuck isn't comfortable. So I just want to redefine that for society, because the current advice is get out of your comfort zone. And it's just dangerous, really.
It's so true. And I have to be honest, Kristen, when I first, in the first, chapter or so, I was like, do I really agree with this? I don't know. I mean, I've always been taught to right, you have to go outside of the comfort zone. That's where all the magic happens, and all those things, which you say them in the book, right? All these things that we hear from all these gurus, and they say, yeah, you have to, that's where you have to go if you're going to grow, and growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone and everything. And I think you got me convinced, by the way, after reading further in the book. So just know that. just know that. But I think it's just a matter of misinformation. Like you said, I think it's just a matter of people utilizing the wrong definition or not having clarity on definitions. And I am a big student of communication, and I have a degree in communication, and I've studied that for 30 years. And so much of how we interact with others is the result of how we communicate, our messaging or lack thereof, right? How we don't communicate. Yeah. And so the way you communicate it is so beautiful that I think when people read your book, and I know it's going to be hugely successful, but when people read your book and they read the definition, then they'll get it like I did. And they'll say, oh, okay. And I want to read something where it says, your comfort zone is your power zone. When you live in your comfort zone, you wake up in the morning with purpose. You have access to clarity. You're able to feel inspired, and you give yourself permission to act out of this inspiration. Because the comfort zone is all about feeling safe. When you're in this space, you naturally prioritize events, relationships, and tasks that are fun and fulfilling. And I think that's a beautiful definition. And I know that you explain it more thoroughly than that, but that I think that beautifully explains it for everyone, because that's where I want to live all the time. That's what I consider, like, and to use another cliche, like living on fire, living for life, living on fire for life, and in that vibrant, like 4K world, that we all want to be a part of.
We're here to experience life and make things more comfortable, and we want to expand. And so comfort is it's really that it's just such a good emotion. And I don't think it's healthy when we shame ourselves for feeling comfort, because we're really living a life and working to eventually be comfortable. So we'll never get there if we just shame ourselves for comfort. So it's just a really nice mindset shift. And I feel like it's a way that we can truly change our lives by prioritizing and being okay with comfort, truly.
And I have to say that when I was reading, I know I probably spent a lot, especially when I became an entrepreneur about 7-8 years ago, that I spent a lot of time in the survival zone. That I spent a lot of time in the survival zone, and I realized that, I probably go in there at times now, that I'll probably still revert kind of that, like, oh, just have to be doing everything and get everything done and not paying attention to the things that are important. And I know I'm much better at it than I used to. But what advice would you give for someone specifically for that? Just, and self-serving, right? I'd love to hear what you have to say about, getting out of that survival zone, kind of that hamster wheel of where you just, having to take care of everything, just, having to survive. I mean, what would you give someone to say how to get into the comfort zone?
Yeah. So survival is kind of the zone of overaction, as you were talking about, and that's outside the comfort zone. And when we really look at what happens to us when we're outside of our comfort zone, physiologically, our body goes into, the stress, fight, flight, or freeze. And so the amygdala is stressed, and then our nervous system is overreacting and saying, okay, I'm going to fight, flight, or freeze. And when we're in this state, we can't think creatively. Both hemispheres of our brains can't communicate clearly. We're not as creative. And so when we're in this place, we could be doing a lot of work, but how productive are we truly? And so it's really important to think about working smarter, not harder. And when we feel comfortable or feel good while we're going through our day or working, you can still do hard things. But when you're in those feelings of these positive feelings and in your comfort zone, literally, you can work smarter. You can have access to the flow, and the flow state is highly productive. When we're out of our comfort zone, we don't have access to the flow state. So it's really about thinking, how can I work smarter? Because in the survival zone, we feel like we have to be busy, and that stress is, kind of a sign that we're doing well and that we're on the right path. But if we stop looking at stress as the determining factor and get out of that mindset, we can say, okay, if I slow down, I can still get this done, and I can probably get it done quicker because I'm in the right, physiologically, my body's in the right state.
I love that you explained it that way, and that you explained about the brain and the physiological state, because I immerse myself in research, and I believe you do as well, that you read a lot and you do the research because you want to know what's behind it and everything. And I'm the same way. And so I can definitely appreciate that. And it's interesting because I'll share some things with my wife or my kids, and sometimes the law of familiarity, they just kind of blow me off. And then I'm like, look, research shows, like, here's what it says and everything. And then they may be more open, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I send it if the research comes in the form of a TikTok, then my kids might be like, oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, I totally agree. But yeah, it's funny, but true. But I think there's kind of no denying, the effects of stress and the negative effects on stress and overwork and all those things. And so for people to get a better understanding of what that comfort zone can look like you've described, that, you can grow and you can expand in that comfort zone. It's not a static place. It's not that you're that place of just complacency, as you said. It's not where you have to stay there. So I'm gonna ask you a question because this was something I struggled with a little bit to help clarify for me and for our audience. So working out is a big part of my life. Okay. Working out is a big part of my life. It always has been. I'm a CrossFit coach. I still do that as a hobby, coach like a class a week. And with athletes, when I coach or thinking of myself, it's always like, oh, you kind of push yourself. And I know you talk about the, no pain, no gain and that kind of thing. And I've never really been a fan of that phrase, but that you have to push yourself, right? That when I see an athlete, for example, and we're doing a workout and they have, 15 minutes to work out and they have to do as many rounds in there as they can, of this exercise and that exercise. And that, one person will do 3 rounds and one person will do 6 and one person will do, 7. And sometimes I see the people that tend to just kind of maybe go about it more complacent, right? That they get 3 and they're happy. So what would you say to that type of person to help them to become where they can be better? I want them to, and I hate to use the phrase, but I want them to get a little uncomfortable to know that they can push themselves. Like how would I explain that? Because that's the part where even after reading the book, I was still, I don't know how I can explain it in the gym, right? Like how can I, explain it?
No, totally. So you can apply this theory to, if you're an athlete, you can apply this, whether you are trying to work out harder or even run a marathon. So in the book, I talk about the 3-phase acclimation process. And essentially that is a growth process, how we grow. So I never really found how do we really grow in a healthy way? And really, we expand and stretch our comfort zone. Just like when we're stretching, we'll stretch just enough to be uncomfortable, but we wouldn't stretch too much to cause an injury. That bit of uncomfortableness allows our muscles to relax. And so because we're expansive beings and we want to grow, using the acclimation process is the best, most healthiest way to do that. And you'll know this from experience. You build up to what you want to do. So you wouldn't tell your client to start doing 25 push-ups if they've never done one. So the 3 phases, the first one, the person is unfamiliar and uncomfortable. And so this is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. You're just getting started, but it's something that you want to do. And we don't spend a lot of time in this phase because with practice, we can get to the second phase, which is familiar and still uncomfortable, but we're getting to know through practice. And so the person might do 2 or 3 push-ups over time with practice. But the goal is to really get to the third phase, which is familiar and comfortable. So with practice, you may get to a place where you're doing the 25 that you set the goal to do. And so that's really how we stretch like a rubber band and expand our comfort zone. We take it one step at a time. And the problem though is that people don't understand this phase process, and then they may stay in the first or second forever. So they may just always be unfamiliar, uncomfortable with something. and never get to that final where they really feel comfortable because they've put the time and the effort in. So this is the same. You can apply this to learning a new skill, or running a marathon. You would add the miles each week. You wouldn't just say, hey, I want to run a marathon. I'm going to start running 26 miles each week, And so it kind of gives you a break for yourself to not expect so much, and do it in a healthy way that doesn't cause injury or a setback that sometimes can happen when someone pushes themselves too far because they just really don't know what that looks like.
It's funny as you explain that, Kristen, which it's all a fantastic explanation. What I think is funny to myself is that as you say that, I'm thinking, duh. That's exactly how I've coached people. That's exactly how I've done things for myself. That's exactly the process that I've gone through, in working out or in many things I'm doing in life. I mean, I've been, my parents were both fluent in Spanish, but they didn't teach it to us. So as an adult, I've been learning Spanish. And so I do a little bit every day on my app. I do a little bit, and I'm like almost 4 years consistent of every day, but I'm not, it's just, I'm not really, I'm just enjoying the process, right? I'm not trying to go from, and I had a friend that when I started, he said, I'm going to start too. And he tried to do everything in a couple weeks and he stopped after 2 weeks. And yeah, I've seen it with people when they start working out, they try to go crazy and then they just stop. They're too sore and they give up. And the way you explained it is perfect. And I think a great one, when people read the book, one thing that really, helped me understand was the example you use of your daughter at the park where, the big park and she wouldn't leave your side. And then she would go a little farther and then a little far, and then she'd be playing over there and she got comfortable. Whereas at one point she was probably very uncomfortable to go far away from you, but now that's her comfort zone, like the rubber band just kind of stretched a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that really helped me to understand. And I think, thanks for explaining at least the exercise part, because it makes total sense. And again, that's what I've been doing all along.
Yeah. I mean, if we can think of it in that way, we won't give up because we're like, oh, this is part of the process. And when you can gauge, a lot of times when you can gauge where you are, you'll keep going. But if you can't, you're like, and then most people just give up or get stuck. So I think it's just important to know that it's a process and it's something that takes time through practice, like anything.
And I'll share that, and I believe you may have seen on social media, but right now my wife and I were taking 12 people through a 60-day mind, body, spirit, renew your mind, body, and spirit challenge. And we're using your 3-minute positivity journal, which we're going through this. I'm actually on my second or third one, but we're going through the journal right now as we speak, and we're almost done. We're like on week 6, I believe, of the 8 or so weeks, and there were that's what we've tried to let them know is that okay, it's just small, little bit at a time, right? And some of them struggle at the beginning, but then and now they're getting more comfortable and it's not trying to dive in where, oh no, you have to do, this huge thing every morning, this long routine. Cause I think some of them, they get scared off because like you say, like, let's use the marathon example, they see someone that can run a marathon with ease and then they're like, I can't even run a mile. And so they get intimidated and they want to give up. And so that's been great for them, that kind of little bit at a time and, kind of stretching and growing. So that does bring up a question that I wanted to ask you is, when did, especially not just because of that, but because I've always been curious, when did journaling become a part of your life? Is it something you've always done since you were little, or did you grow into that?
Yeah, I actually loved journaling. When I was little, I would journal and write poetry. And that was a great way for me to express my emotions. And so I made my first book kind of like a self-help book, Journal in One, because my community, they really needed to take action. And I thought, well, I could combine journaling in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming, but that can also help them stay accountable to living a positive lifestyle. So that's kind of the story behind that, because I love journaling personally, but I've been journaling for a long time. And some people have never journaled. So it's really an easy way for someone to kind of jump in and get started and get used to what it feels like processing your feelings while you're journaling.
Yeah, it's something that I learned later in life. I mean, I'd say probably it's been a consistent part of my morning and evening for maybe about 5 years now, but it wasn't always the case. I mean, I didn't think it was something for me, you know. It's just, I just dove into my day, and it has had a transformational effect on my day. And I've always been someone, just because of technology, that always journaled in my phone.
Yeah, I do.
And I have to say that using your journal, writing it down, and research does show that writing it down is better, right? Writing is better than typing or, you know, putting on a device. And so I have to say, I mean, I love the prompts. I love you know, the act of writing it, you know, physically writing it down, because again, that wasn't something that I was used to. And so I added that as part of my morning, evening routine, and it is very beneficial. So for anyone that hasn't tried that, I'd encourage them to, you know, check out the 3-minute positivity journal. And I think I heard you have another one coming out, journal coming out.
Yeah, everyone wanted a longer one. And so I didn't want to make it too long. I didn't want people, because I really like to carry it around, and I really encourage people to carry it with them. And so the longest I could make it was 90. So the intro is still there. It's a little shorter. And then the journaling entries go to 90 days, and it's all new prompts. You know, it's really the same kind of setup, where you have your gratitude and your, your priority list. And so everything's really the same. It's a little cuter, I think, personally. I kind of tried to update it so it looks better. Cleaner, it's like fresher. It's like the cover's white. So it's really the same look, but the cover is white, same color on the front. I wanted to keep it similar but different. So it's of high value, but it feels familiar, right? I'm excited for it. So June 6th, I believe, will be the 90-day, and it's called 3-Minute Happiness Journal.
Love that.
So we're focusing it all around inner happiness and how we create inner happiness.
That is important, and we'll be sure to promote that in the show notes and on the podcast. And maybe we'll have to have you back on the show when that releases. I know it'll be soon, but it won't be soon enough. But I do want to touch on something, because I'm a believer in that, you know, things happen for a reason. Okay, and knowing we're going to have this interview today, literally there's something that I listen to every morning, and I won't say the name of the person I listen to it every morning, but he has this daily kind of blog and video, and you know, I value his advice as a coach and everything. And the title was getting outside the comfort zone. Okay. Now, so I don't think that's a coincidence that I would see that today. But I wanted to ask you something, a question, especially after reading the book and then seeing that today, is that something that he touched on is fear. And you'll be happy to know that, as he explained, you know, the comfort zone, it sounds more like your definition, right? It's just a matter of, you know, one person using one word versus another, right? So it's a similar definition of what you describe as where we want to be. But talk about, you know, the role of fear in all of this, the role of fear in being in the comfort zone versus not being in the comfort zone, or, you know, how, if that's ever reared its ugly head for you.
You know, when I was out of my comfort zone and I was always hustling and always grinding. And then even when I was rock bottom, I was ridden with fear. I mean, I was hustling because I was afraid that I would be poor, and I wanted to, you know, provide for myself. And even when I was at rock bottom and I was complacent and I was laying in bed for 2 weeks, I was in huge amounts of fear. I mean, I was paralyzed with fear. And being in my comfort zone and prioritizing safety, I trust in the process. I trust in the next step. I have faith that even during hard times, I'm going to be able to get out of it, that there's a higher plan for me, and that everything's going to work out. And so the comfort zone that I talk about doesn't have fear. Where I feel that fear is when we're out of alignment with ourselves. And, God doesn't want us to be fearful. And so to me, being outside of the comfort zone is where all of the fear is and can take over our lives. And there's people just paralyzed with fear, and it's not their fault. It's just they've probably worked themselves to that place or failed so many times that they've ended up in that place.
The way you describe it makes a lot of sense, because I really hear components of the survival zone, right? Or the complacency zone. I really hear components of that when you're describing fear. And I'm not a fearful person. I'm not a stressful person. I mean, when I've had my cortisol checked, I mean, it's like hardly, non-existent, but I think a big part for me that has kept me from being fearful is faith. Is when you were talking right there, as you were answering, Kristen, that's the word that I kept hearing in my head.
Yeah,
is just having faith. And so what role has, as I said earlier in the show, faith was a big part of my upbringing and who I am today and everything. It's a part of my life. What role has faith played in your journey and with, you being in the comfort zone and everything?
Yeah, I feel that faith is what carries me through. During the hard times, when I look back and reflect, I had very little faith. I had faith in myself, I had very little faith in myself. And I also at times had little faith in God. I thought, well, maybe he's forgotten me, or maybe I'm not really meant to do the things that I feel in my heart. Maybe I've got it wrong. And it wasn't until I just had to live in faith all the time, every day, like living in faith. And if, a negative feeling tries to root its way in, I have to cast it out with faith, and affirmations, faithful affirmations that remind me that it's going to be okay. Like, that's just a limiting belief. That's not even true. And so faith really gets me through almost everything. I just know that, even if something challenging happens, faith's got you. Like, something good will come out of it, or something better is on its way. It's just a great way to live, because otherwise worrying about things and kind of obsessing over it not working out usually ends up making it not work out. At least I've found that, I'm like, oh yeah, I see why that didn't work out, because I was undercover nervous about that not working out or something, you know what I mean? Or I wasn't having full 100% faith. Sometimes we can have 75% faith, right? We have faith, but then we're like, I hope so.
Yeah.
But that full faith, it's just so amazing to live in that. It's just a different level.
I'm so glad you confirmed that and affirm that it's important for you. I mean, I can tell that with things you post and everything, that faith is a part of your life. And it's nice to hear you share how it's been a part of your life, because I think that was the big shift for me to really create purpose, to really start living in my purpose, living in the comfort zone, and being there a few years back, was when I went all in faith-wise, to where I said, okay, I'm not going to be that 75% person. I'm going to live 100% in faith. And that's probably going back maybe about 5 years ago. But like I said, faith had always been a part of my life, but not to the point where I was like, okay, I accept everything that comes my way, right? Even if it's something awful that comes my way, something good's going to come of that. God's going to connect the dots. I'll be able to look backwards and say, wow, thank you, God, for that awful thing happening because of what it led to, afterwards, type of thing. And that's another thing that hopefully through your book and through your work with Power of Positivity, and my work with I Spark Change, hopefully more people will get to that place where they know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that there is a silver lining, so to speak, And I know so many people, they just don't live in that place. I mean, they're always just looking at the negativity. And so it's a big question, but any tips or advice you would give to people that struggle to look at things that way, to have that faith? Any advice you would give to them?
Yeah, I think when you're struggling, we want to be gentle with ourselves, because a lot of times we're just shaming ourselves so much that we stay stuck. But to me, it's almost like a release of weight when I have faith. I know it seems like that could be a harder perspective to take, but it actually is. It's just a release, because we're actually carrying so much that we don't need to carry every day. And when we let that go and we let faith take over, it just feels so much better. And it seems kind of scary, like, wow, can I do this? But you're actually in a harder place and in a harder headspace, carrying it all and thinking that it's all up to you and that you are the only one that can get through this. So I don't know, to me, it was just such a transformation. And I've been through ups and downs. And like I said, when I went through the downs, I've realized that it was because of my lack of faith and I was carrying way too much. So if we could give ourselves a break and just stop carrying so much, knowing that we don't have to, it's really amazing.
Well, very, very wise words for all our audience. And thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing, everything today, because I feel like we could talk about this for a lot longer than we have on today's show. But I know our audience is going to want to dive into the comfort zone and get that on April 18th. It should be, at about the time of this episode airing. So you'll all be able to get it right now. But, and obviously they'll want to learn more about you. So I know, Power Positivity and Positive Kristen, but any other things you would want to share with where they'd be best to connect with you?
Yeah, I just launched my new site, positivekristen.com. And so on there, you can check out the different socials, whatever is your favorite one, hit me up, let's connect. And yeah, the comfortzonebook.com. If you get it, go to that website and get bonuses, because I have a ton of bonuses for you there. And also a masterclass, May 6th, a live masterclass that I'm so excited about, to answer questions and kind of dive into things. So it's going to be great.
Very cool. Well, we will put all that in the show notes, and I'm looking I'll put that on my calendar, May 6th for the masterclass. Yes. So I have one final question for you, Kristen. This one that we ask everyone on the podcast, because our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people in the next 5 years through our community and our upcoming social impact social media platform that we'll be creating very soon. But we know we can't do this alone. We need the help of impactful leaders like yourself to show others the way, because many people feel, as I once did, that they're too small to make a difference. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, I value your thoughts and opinions just in general, but also as a social impact hero. So I want you to kind of peer into the future. We have our little iSpark Change crystal ball here, and tell our audience, answer the question, what can the world become if everyone believes that they can have a positive impact on the future?
Wow, that's a really great question. If we all thought we could make a positive impact on this world, we would all be living our purpose here. And that's like the ultimate goal, I feel like, is to just enjoy life and live our purpose.
Yeah, well, very well said. Thank you so much, Kristen. I agree 100%, as I did with basically everything that you shared today on the podcast. Well, thank you very much for taking your time today to share your heart and wisdom with our audience. You came in and you over-delivered, as I knew you would. Your passion, determination, and confidence are inspiring, and you are humble, generous, and you lead with a heart of service and gratitude, which tells me that this is only the beginning of your time as a social impact hero, and you're going to have success in all facets of life. So we loved hearing your story today, Kristen. You're not only inspiring and amazing human being, but you truly are an iSpark Change social impact hero. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Rick.
It's been a pleasure. All right, Impact Heroes, it's our stories that connect us all. We loved hearing Kristen's today. We'll see you all next time.
Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.